Good morning to everyone again, and like yesterday, I'm Nicholas, and I was the game director, team head / whatever you want to call it, on Global Conflicts Palestine, apart from also being one of the Unity founders. And this talk is about, it's called Large Asset and Workflow Pipeline Tips, I think. And the idea was really that for me to tell about the experiences, which problems did we have in this project, how do we solve them, and give the 10 lines of script code that will make your life much, much easier, because they're quite hard to get right. And we had quite a few of those. Unfortunately, for me right now, most of those have been fixed in Unity 2.0, so they're actually quite simple and easy to do. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about the production, I'm going to talk about some of the issues we encountered and how we worked around it. And there's a few tricks and things to be aware of, ways to think. I'm trying to see if I can communicate some of that onto you guys. And then I hope we can have a somewhat long Q&A session, because I mean, it's a lot of how do I do these kind of things, and things that you need to, things that are nice to get locked down when you start up a project. So yeah, anyways, Global Conflicts Palestine. It is, as far as I know at least, still the largest game made with Unity. It was we started out with, 5 people on it. It was a 2-year production, and we ended up with, I think, 7 or 8. So yeah, I mean, yeah, quite a big thing. It's an educational game about the Israel-Palestine conflict, and it's designed for secondary school, just before high school. So I mean, it's not the most complex approach to the subject you could possibly have. And there were a lot of things that were designed, got cut, got changed halfway through the production, as always happens with these long things. But yeah. So that's a bit about this. We made this video here because we were going on CNN, and they wanted to have some material. So I just found out I still have it. I haven't deleted it yet for some obscure reason. But I'll give you an idea of the scope of this project. Skin shading for the win. Okay, so this is part of the game where the basic idea in this game is you're a journalist, and you walk around, interview people, and then build articles for newspapers. So yeah, you walk around this world. You need to get to know people. You need to get them to trust you. You need to speak with them, appear sensible to them, and then in the end, you build newspaper articles. They get shipped to the newspaper, and that's how you earn points in the game and build experience levels. So yeah, that's basically the game. So in this game we had, I think it was 7 main missions, about some 20 odd sideline missions, in a world which was about 400 meters long and 200 meters wide, or thereabouts. I can't remember exactly, but quite a large world. All done as one scene in Unity. The missions themselves were made as prefabs we put into the level. That's basically when you build your game. Let me just stop this thing. Oh, I think I just stopped myself now. Perfect. Yeah. When you build your game, as far as there's basically two ways to go about your level structure. One of them is sort of if you have like a level-based game, say like Goo Ball, because the Pirates game, the Ducketeers game, where you have sort of these levels, you have a bunch of levels the player is progressing through, or however, just getting through them, but you're changing the environment often. And the pattern you use for that is that you have just like some prefabs in there which sort of handle your main game logic, so you can have many scenes, and you just quickly pump out new scenes. In Goo Ball we had 50-odd scenes of gameplay, and then we sort of had like some managers which would spawn the ball, the player control ball for us, make sure everything got set up correctly. For this one is the other pattern, where we have a huge environment which doesn't really change, and then we put all the missions into that environment through prefabs. So the missions are actually what changes here and not the background. So I mean, those are the two basic ways of doing it. I'll be talking a bit about sort of nice ways to structure both and how you should make that work in practice. So the main thing really is you want to keep people productive. And that means that you need to make, it means a lot of things, but one thing is you need to make really good use of prefabs. Okay, so in the first kind of game I just described, you want your level builders to be productive when they're building a level, even if you're the level builder, you still want to be productive while you're doing it. So that means there's no that you have to start the game through a main menu scene, and then you have to select the level, then it loads the level you want to play, and then you can begin playing. That just sort of ruins the flow. You want to have this flow like that Unity will let you have, where you can just have your scene, move something about, hit play, and you're off. So basically the way you do that is that you have one or several sort of manager prefabs. I think in Goo Ball we had 8. It was of the sound manager, which remembered all samples being used, the ball manager, which would sort of insert the player ball in the scene and hook opponents to those prefabs. And if you can do that, it's very quick to crank out new scenes. That's really, really important. If you have many managers, it's usually best to put one manager in a separate game object, especially when you're on a larger team, because then you can have a sound guy come in, and he can sit and work with the sound manager and just hook up new samples, while somebody else can be tweaking the player control settings in another prefab. If they're separate game objects, you don't get any collisions. I'm going to talk a bit about the Unity Asset Server later. I considered doing a demo, but quite frankly, it's a version control system. It's a bit dull. So I'm just going to tell about some of the sort of how to think about it. And yeah, maybe we should probably have some, since it is a brand new product that we're launching. But yeah, it's just not that sexy. I mean, let's face it. Yeah, so I mean, you have your manager game objects. Put stuff into that. I don't know, Ducketeers, where are you sitting? There. Was that sort of, has that been sort of your approach as well?
Yeah, about the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and say for a game like Ducketeers or Goo Ball, what you then do is that you need markers in your levels, sort of where should the player start. So the code flow is basically, you have your marker and you tag it with a player start tag. Your sort of ball spawner or your player spawner will find this up in the level and insert the player there when you hit play. So I mean, yeah, that's the basics of it. There's a lot of small things you can do to help yourself, and do those. Say if you have this this is the transformer where the player will start. From code, I mean, raycast down to find the floor. So you don't need to be really precise with placing it exactly on floor level, because it's just too much hassle, and you want to have this flexibility. And quite often, doing a bit of code will get you really, really far. Especially once your production sort of scales up and you finally realize, oh God, I'm doing 50 levels here. I mean, then these small things can really they can make you work faster, and they can make you not think, oh God, I have to go to work today. I think actually the second thing is the most valuable. Good. For larger projects, where we have this other thing with the prefabs, again, it was very important for us to be able to play the game within Unity. The scene was so large, and back when we started this, Unity wasn't quite as good as it is today. So we had really long level load times. That was a drag. But still, I mean, it was definitely worth it. So we also went through quite a bit of effort to make sure that we could just throw in a mission prefab into our scene and hit play, and then you could test that mission. You had a question? Okay. Just scratching. Fair enough. So yeah. So here. Oh, that's a large window. Meet Intifada Unity. This got branched out from Unity sort of, I don't know, a couple of years ago. This was where Unity GUI got developed. You can see Unity GUI here in action with a custom extension we made. And this is when I talked earlier about I want to open up Unity. It's basically so you can do stuff like this. This is a timeline editor, so we could have somebody who didn't have to be a programmer just sit and be productive in making all our cutscenes, of which there are many, many, many. I've lost count of how many there are, but I think it's well over 100. So again, I mean, small code things you can do that will keep people productive, that is always a nice thing. Now, in our game we had a lot of, for all our cutscenes, we had a lot of cameras. So again, I made a small hack on Draw Gizmo selected, which just took the current camera and rendered it. So when you select a camera, you get a preview of it. And see if I can find a camera that doesn't look bad. Take this one and drag it around. It updates. This was a huge helper, and according to the guy who was actually doing the cutscenes, it just made him work so much faster. So I mean, small stuff like this is something we are looking to, like, just, okay, this is so cool, we just want to have it in Unity because it looks good. But I mean, stuff like this, you need to identify where are the bottlenecks and where can a programmer step in and just make the people who are actually producing content's life so much easier. And it's worth just taking the time to just sort of stepping back and sort of saying, okay, how can I spend one afternoon once in a while and making sure everybody is happy and making sure that they actually have the tools they need to be productive. Our team setup for this thing was me sort of doing everything, and sort of systems programming and game design. That's a really, really bad combination. Don't ever get yourself into that position. You will be so busy. Then we had a programmer, an environment modeler, a character modeler, and an animator / cutscene producing guy, who according to latest rumors is by now, after they're doing yet another project, is beginning to sort of have the same skin color as a Linux server. So I mean, so I think he's got a pretty he's got a pretty tough job as well. But yeah, so again, the way we structure this scene, because this scene is large. I mean, if I turn on fog, where are we? Yeah, it's obviously basically you sort of lose sight of the scene. So here we have sort of a model Israeli city, sort of more or less model of Jerusalem, a fairly quick and dirty way. With sort of the few historical landmarks you need, the Israeli settlement overlooking on a hill with fenced wire around, small dried up Palestinian village, and the Palestinian town. Which is sort of, yeah, based on your typical West Bank stuff. Used a lot of reference materials to get this look right because it was an educational game. Unfortunately, we never had the money to actually go there ourselves, which is, what kind of crap is that? We need to do research. Now this scene is, yeah, I mean, it's really, really It's a really large scene. Can't remember how long time it takes to actually load in Unity, but so the game objects here. Okay, so we had a problem here. That is an issue you'll be having with Unity if you do these really large scenes. So try to. I think this is sort of pushing it. That's basically sometimes we needed to have more than one person working, building the scene at the same time.
The game mode, if you have multiple cameras, can you toggle? Is there a way to toggle from one camera to another and show all the whole scene, with different cameras?
I mean, basically, you can always enable and disable cameras. And you just, yeah, and I mean, and in this game, I mean, we did not want to. We could not have a camera that would show the entire scene, because on some of our target hardware, they would just die if we tried to do that. So I mean, so what we did was we made a map screen which was sort of hand photoshopped to look really nice, because the world was just too large. But yeah, I mean, we had some custom tools to help us make cutscenes. I'd like to get those into Unity one day, but they got to be much more generally useful than ours was, because ours was really a special cased hack for this game. So what we did in order to solve this with having a large scene is basically, I mean, we use prefabs, and we have see, I think this is one of them. Yeah, sort of like a building in a prefab came straight from a Maya file, and then we also, at some point, we needed to break out, and then have somebody work on this one alone. So basically, what it was that we had a separate scene inside Unity called, no, not the one called FAC, called Jerusalem. Oh, has it loaded? Can't have. No, it's thinking. Here we go. Which basically is of all the buildings in Jerusalem wired up. So what we do then, in order to get this from one scene over to the other, was that when you are done working with the scene, you save the scene, you upload it to a Jerusalem total prefab, and then we shut the scene without saving. When you then loaded the main scene, you would get your changes carried over. So basically, we used a prefab as a way to sort of have a representation of one scene inside another. This can work, but be careful about it, because it makes everything be really, really painful. And if somebody saves the other scene after they've uploaded all game objects to the same prefab, you've lost the prefab connection to your Maya meshes. So it's sort of kind of thing. Sometimes you just have to bite the bullet. And now seeing this, I open this scene, and actually everything in here has lost their prefab connection. So at some point, some person has been doing this. You've got the asset server, so it's not like you can't go back and fetch an old version of it. So be careful about it. I mean, first it was just, yeah, we just needed to have more than one person working on the scene at the same time. This was sort of the easiest way of doing it. If I just reload the total. Now, about managers. This, say you have, let's just pretend you're making a first-person shooter, and you're making an enemy. Then it's sort of like, okay, when this enemy dies, he should blow up. So we have like the prefab to replace him with. Normally, you would just have a P pointer to the prefab to replace myself with when I blow up, or the oil drum. That gets unwieldy, yeah? Oh, sorry. What do we call them, pointers? Reference. Yeah, you have a reference. Sorry, P pointer is from C++. You have a reference to the explosion object you use. Now, once your object grows, that is going to be a bit unwieldy. Oh, we got AI stuff in here. Basically, because you're going to have a lot of prefabs in your project. And yeah, I mean, the filtering is not as good as it could be. So basically, and also, I mean, some of you have like 5 different explosions, and you're playing around. Somebody comes in and says, okay, can we make these explosions be a bit better? So they create 3 copies of them. So you'll very easily end up with everybody referencing their own variant of the explosion. You've got absolutely no idea which ones are being used anymore. And if I change this, how much stuff will I actually change? So what we did was that we sort of formalized it. When we insert an NPC into a cutscene, basically what we did was that we had a drop down where I could just select which sprite to use. And drop downs are really, really good for this. You just create an enum in your scripting side, and then in a start function, in the sort of non-NPC script or whatever it can be, then you ask a manager to get me the prefab that is hooked up to be main player character. Makes it very easy for you to have a lot of references to main player character, and you just change it in the manager. Somebody can just change it in there if they're testing out the new player sprite and stuff like that. And then all across the game it will be changed nicely. So it's a very useful tool, and yeah, we used it all over the place. Because, I mean, it's just if I can actually like find a mission in here, content prefabs. Just take the checkpoint mission here. Boom, boom, boom. Somewhere in here there should preferably be. No, I hate it when it does that. Where'd it go? Please. And the container. Here, checkpoint. So here we have, basically, I mean, this is a much easier way for a level designer to select which character to actually insert in the game. Wow, that's a lot. Than having to manage all these P pointers going around inside your asset folder. So from a coding perspective, basically you want to have a manager and keep it around between level loads. And this is sort of a very general useful pattern, also in smaller projects. You want to maintain data and have it be editable in the level while you're testing, and then sort of have the final version in your main menu scene. So basically what you want to do is you want to create a manager which is behaving like was don't destroy and load, but when you switch levels, you do not get multiple copies of it, and you sort of always maintain the first copy you got. In Unity 1.6, that was actually really, really hard to accomplish because there were various shenanigans from sort of the way we were handling loading stuff. But in Unity 2.0, that is quite easy. So here is the code for it. Good. Yeah. Okay. You have a manager class. Oh, this should actually derive from component. I just see. No, it's called mono behavior. Like this. Okay, it has a public. Jesus Christ! I must have been a bit drunk from last night when I wrote this. Public static manager. My manager, yeah, this is going really great. Okay, it has a static member pointing to which is the one we're actually using. In the awake function, I say, okay, if we don't have a manager yet, then that means we're the first one. This is the case you hit when you're in the editor and you just hit play. You don't have a manager. Then you just say, okay, the manager is null. If it's null, we assign it to be us, and we don't want to destroy this game object. The idea is here you only have one manager per game object, which is what you want to have. Okay, if the manager was not null, that means there's already a manager here, like the NPC manager. So in that case, we want to kill ourselves and just get out of the way because there can be only one manager. So this is sort of a very simple thing. And the nice thing then is you can just do public game object or transformer, whatever you want to have, explosion 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. And then you can reference these with an enum. You make a static, give me an object. There's a bit of typing involved, but it's okay. I mean, you see, even though here we had a lot of characters, it's not like it took us very long time to type in that list. It's just something, okay, hey, we got new characters coming. Okay, we'll add a few more. It's a very simple way to do it, and it works extremely well. And it's a lot nicer for level builders to just be able to select what you want from a drop-down than having to assign a P pointer. Basically, some days I literally felt I was spending my entire day just assigning P pointers when working on this game. So you want to minimize references. You want to minimize your reference dragging as much as you can, because it's going to get very unwieldy when your project grows. Good. So I hope I'm not quite running out of time here. Yeah. So, I mean, all this instantiation, do that from code. Help out your content creators, if you're programmers, by doing these small code things. Look into editor scripts, and I mean, I think Arco is probably Jonathan Check is the master of making weird editor scripts. His Unity menus are about twice as large as the ones any of us have, and they're filled with like small useful bits and pieces. And a lot of these are just, I mean, it comes when you have graphic artists and programmers working in the same room around the clock. Then you sort of just get this, okay, hey, can't you just make me a quick script that does it? And you want to support that, and you want to support that notion. So yeah, the Unity Asset Server, yeah. It's a version control system. You can upload prefabs and scenes to it. Other people can download it. If I rename a file, somebody else will just have that file renamed for them. So it goes into a new location, to a new file name. It has the full change tracking. You can go back to an arbitrary version. You can diff binary files. And it's really, really good. You want to use it the moment your project gets sort of remotely large, and you just think sending packages back and forth is too much hassle. Anything I missed about the asset server? No, I mean, yeah, it's one of those. But I mean, it's one of those things that you saw after having had it for a while. Think, how did I ever live without? We've had it for quite a few years, but boy, it's been buggy until now. Yeah. So, I think that is really it. Any questions?
Could you explain a little bit more? You say you just drag a mission prefab into the scene. What does that mission prefab consist of? Like waypoints, NPCs? Is it the whole entire?
Everything that's going to happen in this mission. So we have like, where's my mouse? So let me see. Yeah, I mean, so basically, this is the checkpoint mission. Has all NPCs. And it has sort of custom props for this mission. There are no custom props. Some special objects that looks like some trigger zones here. So a list of events that gives the player score. Now a bunch of random bystanders, an ambulance, and then each of these, guys, let me just see if I can find one of these sort of. Here, each of these persons have a bunch of actions going down here. And this is one of the shorter ones. And that is, I mean, it just stopped working right now because, yeah, this is a buggy version of Unity sort of from 8 months ago. But that was why we made the timeline down here for the, if I save a script, go back to Unity.
And working in the editor is still responsive when you're nesting prefab instead of prefab instead of prefab?
What?
Is working in the editor still responsive when you're nesting, when you're making these huge prefabs?
Sort of. I mean, it's not that the editor becomes unresponsive. The main problem is that the editor doesn't actually support nested prefabs. So if you have your meshes, pull them in to your scene, take a part of the scene, upload to another prefab, they forget where they came from. Which is a major hassle when you're working on a large project, but yeah. It's just something to be aware of. You have that tool, and it's like a double-barrel gun where wherever you point it, one barrel will always be pointed at yourself. So you can use it to take out a problem, but think twice before firing. But I mean, yeah, so this is the extreme side of being artist-friendly. I mean, we made this timeline editor for them, with which they were doing all their cutscenes. And again, I mean, that was just this, so again, small hack, because we just see this was getting way too unwieldy. So basically, we made it so that, we have all characters in the mission, and each of these get a line here, so depending on how long time it takes to execute. And that was okay, and that was really nice one, but what really made a difference was the fact that was when we introduced, that when you click, then it only shows that component in the inspector. and I'm not quite sure what has happened here, but this used to be really snappy and just like click, 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 and browse around and get things. So I mean, these small, tiny details just help them out no end. If you're doing camera sequencing, we actually render this preview into the timeline, so you can see what they're doing. And it was not that much code. It certainly did not take me a very long time to do this, because it's sort of built into Unity GUI, but it made their life so much easier. And you really want to help them in this regard, because as programmers, then you have much less work to do than the content creation guys on a large-scale production. So if you spend 1 hour, it's quickly going to save them 20. Any other questions? Yeah?
Yeah. Since the world is very large, and I haven't played the game, so I'm not exactly sure how the missions work. How did you use the texture sheets? How did you create it so that you're not handling enormous amounts of data that you're not going to use? How did you call it all? If you're using
Okay, for culling, we had. Let me just see if I can actually hit play and it work. I mean, for some reason I deleted this project and then I realized what I was doing and clicked stop halfway through emptying my trash. So it's sort of, I'm a bit scared of actually hitting play because I have no idea what's going to happen here. That's why you should never empty your trash when you haven't been sleeping. And don't mind the speed. This is like early debug builds before Unity 2 got really good. Bum, 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 bum.
Well, while that's waiting, can I ask a question about the timeline?
Yeah.
Each of those individual blue segments is relative to a script that's attached to that object.
Yeah.
How is it that you make the script sensitive to the timeline, to where it is in time?
Basically, okay, I mean, the way we coded this was just that, okay, the game object has to have this sort of, the setup component. So setup component is basically sort of tell the first script, now you can execute. That would enable itself if that's what it wanted to do. And then it would sort of, after a given time, it would just tell back, it would just call back to the setup script and say, okay, advance, I'm done, start the next guy. And then you sort of get this sequence. Oh, this is really doxed. Again, in conversations we had, matrix stack overflow in the bottom. Okay, we're getting lots of errors here. We had a bunch of cameras here, and so it was sort of like, we just realized that in some conversations, the camera was stuck deeper inside a wall. So, I mean, adding this sort of debug functionality, which appears to have stopped working in the meantime, which would just let the artist just go through and just select the camera angles, and then they could debug it and just say, okay, this one and this one is not working in this position. So again, a very simple tool that meant that we could fix this bug across the entire game in an afternoon. Now about culling. The reason I wanted to start is that I want to actually just do like this. Now it's fast. Okay, where's my camera? It's somewhere over here, I think. Do we have a camera? Yeah, we got it here. Now, what we did was we did the classical multi-camera trick, where you have a depth camera and you use different layers. Could you please update? Is this not the camera being used? I guess not. I guess this is the camera being used. Here we go. Yeah. So we've got several layers of depth going on. I think we have actually 3 layers. We have this custom tool called layer camera, which sets up some other cameras, make sure they're in the same position. And then we have various layers. And you just see here, if we turn off details. So above some 20 meters, we don't render details. I mean, it's not like it does a huge difference in the graphic quality. It does up close, but it certainly saves a ridiculous amount of objects. In the very far distance, I mean, we hardly draw anything. I think maybe we just draw ground. Yeah, we definitely draw the ground. I think we just, in this, I think we just draw ground and buildings layer. Then we draw a bunch of different things, and then we draw everything else and details. For people walking around the street, we don't spawn people over the entire city. We just keep them around the player, remove them when they're far away, and move them to sort of make them wrap around the player. So that's basically how we handle culling. And worked just fine. was plenty fast. And we even had, I think, yeah, layered camera. Oh well. I mean, we even had them, we were working on getting depth of field blur in on the soft background images. It looked really good, but it was a bit buggy in some situations, so we axed it. Kill your darlings. Yeah?
A follow-up question. Knowing what you know now and having the tools that you have now, how would you have done this differently? How would you have approached it differently?
That's a good question. It never occurred to me to ask that. I would not have done this, get the prefab into the scene hack. I'm not quite sure what I would have solved it, but I would have solved it better. Because that caused some headaches. But I don't really think there's a lot of things I would do differently. I mean, it's not like I was new to Unity when I started this project, so. I would probably scale down ambitions up front rather than struggling like mad to get everything in and then realizing, oh shit, we're not gonna make it. Yeah.
Was your entire dev team on site, or did you work with remote groups?
Mainly they were on site. I mean, we had like freelancers for say audio. We haven't done any speech because there's a lot of text in this game and it's been translated to I think 5 languages. So audio would just be prohibitively expensive. Or speech, music. The music guy was offsite because our CEO used to be best buddies with the guy who did the sound for the Tomb Raider games. So I mean, it was just Which is also why the music is quite good in this game, much better than sort of the rest. Because we just got one of the best people in the world to actually do this for us, for free. I think maybe we paid him a beer or something. But I mean, yeah. So we had, and I prefer the idea of having. I mean, people who work together, I think, should also be sitting together. Depending on the size of your team, I mean, you can outsource some things, and it's like all the 2D GUI design. We had a guy who just sort of came in and specialized in 2D illustration work, and he was working offsite, just coming and showing us what he got, and we were talking about it. I would go to his place, we would meet up, sort of. So I mean, you can definitely do that. I guess it's the same rules as always when you're outsourcing game production. The same things apply in Unity. It's more efficient to have people who are working together, sitting together, especially on small teams who can get this specific synergy going. Anything else? Yeah?
It looked like at one point you had highlighted I saw a bunch of green and red areas.
Yeah.
To me it looked like go and no-go zones for the NPCs or whatever.
Yeah,
Can you
it
talk
basically
about
was, the way we handled that was that we had the graphic artist actually build a navigation mesh, which we then further process. Let me see if I can find it. Now the mission script is running. That's always bad. See if we can't get it. Basically, what we did was we had the graphic artist build a sort of a mesh, which was sort of say where you could go and couldn't go, and basically he would vertex color it, so you would have roads and sidewalks. That was basically weighing cost for sort of the typical A-star pathfinding, and then you would have back alleys, and then sort of depending on which kind of person you were, you would have different weights. So kids would love to go through back alleys, whereas grown-ups would tend to walk much more along the pavement. And if somebody was panicking, then we would swap the weights around so they didn't care about if they ran on the road, but most of them would try to avoid it.
I haven't explored the manager that much, but is there, like when you're doing in a group project,
Yeah?
is there a place where you can have certain objects and certain areas where you can write comments about what the project is about, so that the next person who goes in can read the comment and say, this is what is done, this is what you need to do.
I mean, basically we just used a wiki.
Okay.
We also just use sort of the programmers would enter the authoritative. This is how you create a new NPC from scratch. And this is what needs to be done. You need to remember to add this component here and that component
So
there.
the wiki you can just write for the next person. And
Yeah. But we didn't tie it into like being in a specific location in the game or anything. Sort of like this square is being used in these missions and stuff like that. We didn't scene. Then we used task management Fuckbox to sort of track who needs to do what by when. That worked out fine. I mean, you need some sort of task management.
You had that in the editor, right?
No, no, I mean, it's just running our website next to the wiki.
Okay. That could be a nice add to the future.
Yeah,
feature
to the
list.
editor, yeah.
It's just a comment field for any objects that you might
Yeah.
drag in, just a plain old little thing so you can click on prefab or individual objects.
I mean, if you want to have like notes and scene, I think that could be quite easily done.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Especially for the artists and all who are not going into scripting, so.
yeah. Anyone else? All right, thanks, guys.